Welcome to Unleash the Awesome with Dave Gambrill. All of us have unique skills, talents, and abilities that aren't being used to their full potential. Our mission is to share the people, tools, apps, and other resources that will help you unleash your awesome on the world.
Yo, what's up? It's Dave. Welcome to another episode of Unleash the Awesome. Today, let's talk about some of the amazing things that I learned from a new friend, Grant Cardone. Yes, the Grant Cardone. I was invited to spend a couple days with him a couple weeks ago and went down to his office in Miami, got a tour of all the stuff that they're doing there. Grant spoke to us for a little while on what they do and how they do it and their systems and their processes and all of that stuff. And it was really eye-opening to me. I learned a ton. And honestly, before you tune out, hear this, because you're probably in the same situation I was. When I first saw Grant Cardone, I was a little put off by how he shows up in the marketplace, right? But I came to realize that a lot of times when you see problems in people, when there's a little bit of a disconnect, sometimes that's a deep-rooted issue that you have, right? It's something that's coming out of you. It's a reflection of you. So I would see Grant in the marketplace. I'm like, that guy rubs me the wrong way. I don't like the way he shows up. I don't want to do business with a guy like that. And what I've come to learn is a lot of the stuff he does is targeting specific audiences for specific reasons. So I can learn a lot from him, and I did learn a lot from him. I'm going to share a lot of it with you in a minute here. But that doesn't mean I have to act like him or I have to do the same things that he does. I could take what he does and do it in my own way, right? So I don't want to grow a $1 bazillion business like he does. I don't, want to show up and flaunt a lot of the stuff the way he does, but I can still highlight the things that are important to me and are important to how I show up in business and the things I care about in terms of my time freedom and things like that. So before you tune out, just hear that and understand that. Maybe you don't like how he shows up either, but if you come to understand that success leaves clues, and the guy has over 7 or 8 businesses that are highly successful, over $2 or $3 billion in real estate holdings, a company that does $125 to $150 million year over year, right? Recurring revenue, all kinds of stuff. There's a lot of things we can learn from him. And before I go further, I wanted to let you know, this is going to be like a stream of consciousness podcast. I'm just going to kind of go through my notes and talk about some of the high-level takeaways. If you want a more refined takeaway, if you want my notes and some of the other stuff, frankly, that we're working on, I'm going to be helping him launch a project here in the not-too-distant future. If you go to gambrill.com/2023, you can opt in, and I'll share all the information with you in much more detail. I have some videos from Grant where he answered some questions for us. I got all kinds of other stuff. So if you want to do a deeper dive on that, which I highly recommend you do, just check the show notes for the link. Again, it's gambrill.com/2023, and you can get on that list to make sure you get all of that information. Okay, let's jump into the key things I learned from Grant Cardone. The first thing is this: that dude is a marketing machine. And I think one of his biggest mistakes he's made, and he said this himself, is that he was always like a sales machine. And because he could sell really well, he wanted to grow a really big sales machine. But he came to realize that if he marketed better, if he spent more time up front marketing the stuff that he had, then he didn't have to spend as much time training his sales team on how to sell and how to persuade, because instead of them fielding cold calls, they were fielding warm calls. They're basically order takers now, right? People are calling in because of his marketing for all of the stuff he does, his events, his Cardone Capital, like all the businesses he has. He does so much marketing, and he's out there in the marketplace in so many different ways consistently that his sales team now basically is just taking incoming orders. They don't really have to do a lot of selling. They might do some upselling or some cross-selling. Maybe, someone's calling in to go to 10X GrowthCon conference that he has, and maybe they were just going to get a regular seat, and maybe a sales team will upgrade people to or upsell them to a VIP or platinum or whatever he's offering, right? But they don't have to spend as much time selling their stuff. So I would encourage you to think about what you're doing. And you hear me talk about this all of the time. If you would get out there and be consistent in your messaging in some way, shape, or form on the platform in which you think most of your audience shows up on, then it's a lot easier to sell your stuff when it's time to sell your stuff. The mistake I see a lot of you making is that you don't do any marketing, and then you show up with a book or a project or a course or something, and you're like, hey, buy my thing. And you spend so much time and so much effort, so much energy, and frankly, it's tiring. And if you don't have any real training in sales, you have a really hard time understanding what the buying objections are and moving people past that. But if you start to think about what the buying objections might be for people, what the features and benefits of your products are, your courses, your coaching, whatever it is you're offering, and you start weaving that into your marketing, then when it's time to sell something, you have a captive audience of people that already want your stuff. And then basically you just take orders, right? When you open the cart, people just buy it, right? I'm not trying to make it seem like magic, but it kind of is when you do the marketing. So that's one of the things Grant talked about. And I took some pictures, which I'll probably share again through that link that I mentioned before, of the tour in his office. And we actually got a video. Jared, his CEO, gave us a private tour of the office and shared a lot of the stuff. And in every single room of that office they have set up, they have things about marketing. I think one of them says promote, 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 and big neon sign across the top of the office that they're in, right? So marketing matters. If you're not doing it, do it. All right. That would be my biggest takeaway from Grant. And he said it himself again. Once he switched his whole process from selling to a marketing machine, his sales went up almost exponentially. The second thing I'll share with you is, and Grant said this as he was talking to us, and then when I went around the office, I saw it. He said, graph everything. Put everything in graphs. Everything you need to look at, your dashboards, things like that, put them in graphs. So as you go around the office, you'll see that they have these giant monitors that are showing the daily sales, the weekly sales, the monthly sales volume, whatever. And if they're trying to hit certain targets or whatever, you can clearly see how short they are from the targets, how many units they need, things like that. So he makes his dashboard or his key performance indicators, his KPIs, he makes those very easy for everybody in his office, everybody on his team to see. And one of the things he said in a video where I asked him a question, I think I already shared this on Instagram, but I'll make sure I share it with you here and again through that link that is in the show notes. He talked about the closer he gets to a target, the more frequently he wants to see updates on it, because it just makes him, it keeps it top of mind for him and makes him take action more consistently and actually hit that target. So the second thing, first thing is marketing. The second thing is graph everything, or put it in a very simple dashboard that you can look at on a daily basis and see where you stand and how far you are from your targets. And I'll tell you this, one of the things they measure, and one of the things Russell Brunson measures at ClickFunnels and is on their key performance indicators, are how many people they're adding to their email list or their contact list every single day. So if you're sick of hearing me say that, I don't say that because that's just what I like to say. I say it because I know it works. And I'm now looking at these $100, $200, $350 million a year businesses, multi-billion dollar businesses. They are all still focused on how many people they're adding to their list. Okay. So the first one's marketing. The second one is graph everything. The third one that kind of the biggest takeaway that I saw that wasn't overtly stated was they have systems and processes for just about everything. So I had mentioned in a conversation, I was there to set the scene. He has a classroom there, and there was about 30 of us that got invited to go down, and we were masterminding for a couple of days there in his office. And we were talking about marketing and promotion and this thing that I'm going to be launching with him in January of 2023. And I had mentioned some things to them. I said, hey, why don't we do this? Or why don't we try this? And I said, well, why don't you just give us 5 of these things, right? 5 pieces of content. And of course, in typical Grant fashion, he 10x'd it immediately. He's like, I'll do 50 of them. I'm like, okay, sounds good. Thanks, Grant. But as I was talking about this stuff and how we're going to roll it out, it was very apparent that they then had a process to make that happen. So as he was thinking about it, as we were brainstorming it, they mentioned to his assistant that was sitting in the room. She captured it. She passed it on to somebody else. And then literally within a couple hours, as we were getting a tour of the facility, I saw them working on it in their studio, which will be the next thing I'll talk about in a second. So make sure you have systems and processes. If you're a one-woman show, if you use something like Trello, you can put some automations in there, or maybe Ask Monday or ClickUp or some of these other things, right? In your Gmail and any email, really, you can have systems and processes and folders and filters and all this stuff. If you're not using that, if you don't have systems and processes in place, I would encourage you to do that. And one of the ways you could do it is look at what you're doing on a daily basis, a weekly basis, and just jot it down. I did that for this podcast. I was looking at the key things I need to do to get this podcast out so that if I ever want to outsource it to somebody to produce it, I can. And all I have to do is just show up and record this piece of it, and then they could do the rest of it. And I have had some people actually work with me on it before, but you can't outsource a process or a system if you don't have it clearly documented. So just make sure that you get that figured out. Okay, the next thing that I thought was fascinating is Grant has a studio right there in his office. And it is, the guy's got some money. So it's a TV quality, like TV station quality studio. But here's the thing. It is not very big. It is really not much bigger than the office that I'm sitting in right now in my house. Maybe only, 2 or 3 feet bigger. It's not much bigger. He obviously has much better cameras and things like that. But as I was looking at him, like, you know what? This isn't huge, and he has a desk, and he has a camera, and he has a microphone, and he has some lights. And I'm thinking anybody that I talk to on my podcast could do something similar. And I have a similar thing here in my office. I have a webcam that probably costs, and it's an HD webcam, probably cost, I don't know, $60, $75. A ring lights, an LED ring light that was probably like $30. Some LED lights that were probably $30 for the pair. A microphone that was about $100, Blue Yeti. And, a couple other things. So a couple $100 worth of equipment, not including my computer. And I have a studio right here in my office. And so you don't need a studio like he has set up, and you can always upgrade as you go. But I found it interesting, just like I have here in my house, right there in his office, he has a studio. And if he needs to record something, he wants to record something, he literally could just walk right into it and start doing it. Now, he also records a lot of stuff from his phone, and I watched him do it while he was there himself. He didn't have a team. It wasn't like Gary Vaynerchuk where he had people following him around recording all his stuff. Like, he took out his phone and started recording some stuff. So don't let that be an excuse that, I don't have a studio. I can't afford a studio. I don't have all this stuff. You have a phone in your pocket that can shoot HD quality video, and you can put your stuff out there, which goes back to the first thing I talked about, marketing. Right? And if you don't know what to talk about, you don't know what to communicate, I'll put a link in the show notes to one of the episodes I did before about my rapid creation content system, or who's the who, so what, so you can think about some of the things you're doing. But if you are living your life, if you just document your life, document your journey, put it out there, especially if you're building a personal brand, that gives people an opportunity to know, like, and trust you. It's a form of marketing. And then as you're going and you're getting closer to launching your thing, there will be people that will be ready to buy your stuff. But again, if you don't do any of this, it's never going to work for you. Okay. So those are some of the big things. Let me go through my notes here and just see. One of the other thing, and I told you this would be stream of consciousness, so it's not super organized. One other thing I also found fascinating, he talked about frequency of messaging and putting stuff out there. And he asked this question, which I think is something you should ask yourself, because, Grant, the way he teaches is pretty funny, and it's like a punch in the face sometimes. He was talking about marketing. He said, hey, if you're not marketing, you're invisible, man. And what is the ROI? What is the return on investment for being invisible? I was like, it's a great question. If you don't show up in the marketplace, how are people supposed to know that you have something for sale? All right. So if you're not out there, which I know a lot of you are challenged with this, just start, just get out there. And I think a lot of the problem is that people don't want to be seen starting small, but you have to start somewhere. And frankly, the people that will be most attracted to you are the people that see you starting small, and then they watch you grow, and they'll see your journey. I get that a lot. There's a fair amount of people that are in my audience that are like, man, I was with Dave since the beginning, and he's still the same guy, even though his business has grown, however much it's grown, exponentially. He's still the same guy. He's still the same dude that I came to know 5, 6, 10 years ago, whatever. And I've been following his journey. Listen, people can't follow your journey if you're not showing up. All right. So make sure you get some frequency of messaging going. Another question he asked is, he was talking about stuff, and he said, a lot of the stuff I do might not work for you. Maybe you don't like it. Maybe it's not something you want to do. But he said, or he asked, how will you know something works for you until you work it? Which is a great question, right? How do you know if it's going to work for you if you don't work it? And I think for a lot of people, they don't work it long enough. So one of the things you've heard me say before, Russell Brunson said it on this very podcast. I say it a lot. I just heard Grant say it a lot. If you will publish consistently, Russell says every single day for a year, you're pretty much not going to have to worry about finances ever. Because as you publish and put stuff out there and get better, and you build your course, you write your book, you put your stuff out there, people come to know, like, and trust you. Then you have stuff in the marketplace. And then you have, which I've talked about a million times, I'll put this link in the show notes for you, essentially 1,000 true fans, which is what Kevin Kelly talked about in his blog post. And if you think about it, for just very simple math, for many people, if you had 1,000 true fans who would spend $100 a year with you, okay, on your products, services, coaching, whatever, that's $100,000, right? Gross. But a lot of the stuff that I teach in terms of digital products and things like that, the margins are pretty fat. So for a lot of people, if you made just an extra 6 figures on the side, that would be life-changing. That would give you some choices. That would free you up to be able to do some things that perhaps you can't see yourself doing right now because you don't have the finances to do it. But you can't do all of that if you don't try and you don't give it a shot, right? A lot of people, the mistake they'll make is like, well, I did 1 Facebook Live or I did 2 podcast episodes and nobody listened, nobody downloaded, nobody watched it. Of course not. You have to have some consistency, right? Give yourself 90 days, 100 episodes, whatever, to say like, I'm going to do the stuff. I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to put it out there. And the cool thing is when you do a podcast or even Facebook Lives, if you do them on the open graph, not inside a group or whatever, and put some of that stuff on YouTube, then people can search that stuff forever. And you could show up in search engines and people are looking for that. So even if people aren't watching initially or listening initially, you might find that someone finds it later and they share it and it takes off. I've had that happen with episodes of this podcast that I didn't even think were like the best episodes or the ones that were the most popular. But sometimes I'll go and look at my data and I'll be like, why in the world did that episode take off this week? And I find out that somebody shared it somewhere. So like, it wasn't the best episode. It wasn't the most listened to episode, when it first came out, and it wasn't for months, at this point, a year. And then all of a sudden somebody found it, it answered their question, it helped them solve a problem. They found a lot of value in it and they shared it. And then more people heard it, more people came to know, like, and trust me, and now I have more people in my audience. None of that stuff happens if you aren't publishing something somewhere on a consistent basis, okay? All right, so I have a bunch of other notes around that: frequency of messaging, take action, grow your brand, a whole bunch of stuff like that. Some other things I'll mention, and then again, if you didn't already check this out, make sure you go to gambrill.com/2023. I'll share more cogent thoughts on this and deeper dives on some of these things. Again, this is just kind of top level stream of consciousness, but some of the other things he talked about just from a business perspective, I mentioned marketing. He says he focuses on marketing every single day. Like, that's his main focus. Secondarily would be sales, right? So that's the second thing, right? You market with the idea of selling more stuff. So those are the first 2 things. Then he talks about networking in terms of, this is something fascinating, by the way, that I thought was a really cool takeaway. You've heard me say the quote from Jim Rohn. You've probably heard it from other people as well, right? You become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And yes, that's important. And yes, that helps shape your trajectory. And even Grant said it, right? Your network becomes your net worth. But he said something I found really interesting around that. It was kind of like tangential to that, but it really hit me. And I don't know if other people picked up on it, but he said, I like to spend more time or focus more of my energy on meeting new people, on spending time with people I don't already know. And I found that fascinating because he said, as a follow-up to that, the people you already know, the people you're already around, you already know the resources and the value they bring to whatever it is you're trying to do and how they can contribute to what you're trying to do. So if you're not already where you want to be, then maybe those people aren't the people that have the information or the network or the connections or things like that can help you get to the next level. He said, the people who are going to get you to the next level are people you don't even know yet. And I was like, ooh, that's pretty good, right? So a lot of us will spend a lot of time, hanging out with the same people, but when do you go and meet somebody new? And I found that fascinating about this group because I mentioned this, I don't know if I mentioned on the podcast, but for me to go down to this event with him, it was kind of a last second thing. I got invited, and then I had to fly down there and take some days off from my business and go down there. And obviously I have my business set up so that it just kind of goes even when I'm not actively working on it, which goes back to the conversation about systems and processes and automation. But I went down there and I knew a couple people in the room, but of the 30 or 40 people that were in the room, I probably knew 10 or 12 of them. So that I didn't know most of the room. And I got to meet a whole bunch of amazing people that I didn't know, and I had no idea what they did, but they probably could help me with their audience, right? There's some things I could share with their audience that would help them, but obviously it would help me, and vice versa, right? So a lot of partnerships and stuff happened. You may hear some of these people come on the podcast in the not too distant future because I went in that room and I purposely met as many of those people that I could. I went around on breaks and stuff like that, and we had dinners and all kinds of breakfast and networking opportunities. And instead of just trying to go up and spend all the time with Grant and the people on his team or whatever, I spent a fair amount of time getting to know all the other people in the room because I didn't know them, and maybe they have the key that will unlock a door that has been holding me back. Maybe they just say something, right? Maybe they just go, "Hey, have you tried this?" or whatever. And I know it happened for other people. Because as they were asking me about my business and what I do, I just mentioned a couple things, kind of just, it wasn't even like a strategic thing I said. It just kind of came out of my mouth. I'm like, well, yeah, I kind of do this, whatever. And they were like, wait, you do what? Wait, hold on. Explain that to me, right? And they wanted a deeper dive on it. I was like, oh, okay. It's all right. So what may seem simple to you could be life-changing to other people, but also vice versa, right? So you could meet some people. I met Rudy Maurer, never met him before, and he was talking about Facebook ads and targeting and some other stuff, and he just said something in passing to me, and I was like, wait, what? Say that again. Hold on. I don't understand that. Could you clarify that for me? Peng Joon was there, Anthony Morrison, a whole bunch of people, and, we would spend time. I rode an Uber with some of those guys back to the hotel, and just some of the stories and stuff they were sharing, I was like, wow, okay. So even though I knew these people, I don't spend a lot of time around them, so I would essentially call them strangers, I guess. And they gave me some information and some stuff and some things to think about that I had not considered before. So 2 ways to think about that. 1, right, who are you spending most of your time with? But 2, make sure you get out of that circle and go into other audiences and other places and do other things because some of those people may have the answer that you've been looking for. All right, so the last thing I'll talk about here is marketing in terms of messaging and the things that you're trying to do with your audience, right? So we all know that people are going to do one of two things, and your marketing should be focused on this. Are they being attracted to something pleasurable, or are they running away from some kind of pain, right? So are you selling a vacation to Aruba? If you are, yes, some of it is about, hey, come to Aruba where it's always 85 degrees with a light breeze and it's beautiful and you can sit on the beach and drink pina coladas and yeah. But you'll see a lot of times in the marketing, especially here where I live in the Northeast of the United States, they'll say, oh, you sick of the cold and the snow and the rain and the gross weather and that's gross. Come somewhere where it's beautiful and nice. Come to Aruba, right? So they talk about the negative side of it, the escaping the pain, get out of the cold and come enjoy yourself on this beach. And one of the things Grant said was, people tend to raise their hand faster for help or to self-identify as somebody who wants to buy your thing when they're in pain. And if you think about some of the classic copywriting techniques, right? There's one called problem, agitate, solve, PAS. What is the problem? Agitate it, and then provide your thing as a solution to it, right? So that agitation piece is the pain piece, right? It's like, oh, here's something painful. We have a solution. If you think about any of those infomercials, especially the ones that are like the shorter, just like 3-minute, 90-second or 3-minute ones, where they're trying to show you like, oh, do you have trouble stacking all of your Tupperware or all of your plastic containers in your cupboard or whatever in your kitchen? And the lady opens a thing and they fall on her. Some dude is like, can't find a lid for his Tupperware. And then they're like, well, then have this. We have this stack and store system, blah, 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 right? So very quickly it goes from a painful thing, which in that case, it's agitating a thing that I don't even know is all that painful, but they agitate the pain and then they go, oh, well, we have a solution, right? So as you're promoting your stuff, as you're doing your marketing, as you're doing your messaging, as you're building your brand, make sure you're talking about the painful side of it and agitating that a little bit and then positioning yourself as a solution to that problem. Hey, having a problem with this? I can help. Hey, having a problem with this? Do you hate this? Is this awful? Well, one of the things I do that will simplify that is this, right? And it's really that simple. It doesn't need to be, going super deep on people. and, really, really agitating it. Now, if it's a high price point thing or something, maybe. But for most of it, it's just simply saying, reminding people that, hey, you don't like this thing. You have this problem. This is not something that you like, and we actually have a solution for it. One of the companies I used to work for, a software company, purposely stayed located in New Jersey, and it was relatively easy to get to. So they did not locate in New York City. And one of the things they did was they bought billboards along the commute to New York City that said, hate your commute, like, hey, tech person, something like that. Hey, coder, hey, computer science person, whatever. Do you hate sitting in traffic right now? You should come join this company because we're located here and it's easy to get to and we have a fun atmosphere, blah, blah, blah. Right? So even on their billboards, it was like agitating, like, yeah, sitting in traffic sucks. And here you are reading our billboard. But instead you could be, instead of sitting in traffic, you could be working for us where it's a cool company, blah, blah, blah. Right? So it doesn't need to be crazy. It doesn't need to go into like deep emotional trauma with people. It could be a simple thing like that. So if you're thinking about your messaging and you're thinking about how you're doing your marketing and you're like, Dave, I don't know what to talk about, then some of it is just, if you're documenting your journey, you talk about, hey, I had this problem. It wasn't working for me. So I made this little change and I'm using this thing, or I created this system, or I have this framework, and now it's working and I love it and it's great. And it doesn't work all the time, but it works like 90% of the time. And that's better than what I was doing before. If you want access to my system, just go over here and I'll sell it to you, right? It could be really that simple, right? Don't overcomplicate it. All right, so I'm going to stop there. I have like 50 pages of notes, but again, I'll share them over the next couple of weeks and months through that email list at gambrill.com/2023. And I got some other cool stuff that we're working on that will be coming out in mid-January that you do not want to miss, because it will help you go deeper specifically on these things like money mindset and marketing and sales and scaling if you want. All that stuff is coming. So if you don't want to miss it and you want a much deeper dive on all that, make sure you check that link in the show notes, because I know without a shadow of a doubt this information we're going to share, and even the stuff I shared today, is going to help you unleash your awesome on the world. See ya.
Thanks for listening to Unleash the Awesome. Please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please share us on your favorite social media platforms using #UnleashAwesome.